Yeah, well, most people, I think this is a salient point that a lot of people need to consider is, man, most people determine their morality based on moral intuitions,
Hmm. Hmm.
but we like all it takes is just to read human history, and
Hmm.
you can see that the moral intuitions of people can be unbelievably
Hmm.
wrong.
Hmm.
And so when you actually don't have a moral foundation, a philosophical, when you don't foundation that you actually can test and you can challenge and you can get to the nitty-gritty of and say, why do I believe that certain human beings are valuable? Because then you're left with just your moral intuitions. But
Hmm. Hmm.
100 years ago, if we were having this conversation, how you felt about people of a certain particular skin color
Hmm.
was very indicative of how you might have felt toward right now
Hmm.
for human beings in a certain trimester.
Hmm.
And so just because your moral intuition based on culture, based on the friend group you have, based on this propaganda machine of of the media and everything, these are all hugely influenced. We're such a product of our environment.
Hmm.
It's so stinking important to realize that your intuition, your moral intuition towards a people group can be prejudice, can be wrong, and can be evil. And so if we don't challenge those and realize that, hey, every single human being is valuable, and just because a zygote doesn't look like something that I deem equally valuable and worthy of life,
Hmm.
doesn't mean it is. Because Jews in the Holocaust were put in ovens by people that had told themselves lies by the culture,
Hmm.
and their moral intuition didn't. I mean, did they know innately at some part it was wrong, or people that enslaved and people enslaved African American populations, they probably did, maybe they did,
Hmm.
but we had a whole culture whose moral intuitions were wrong and grossly inaccurate.
Well, I mean, literally, it's called they dehumanize them. So they make them
Yeah,
not human, right? So slaves, that's actually a really good point. Slaves were not seen as humans. They were seen as commodities that could be traded and sold.
yeah.
Arguably, and not arguably, but that's also what we're seeing with these fetuses, right? They are
Mhm.
being, I think that people who are involved in the abortion industry,
Yeah,
they clearly see them as commodities. They see them as opportunities to do research. They see them as,
totally.
even people who have the best intentions, who want to do research, who want to develop vaccines, who want to, grow a liver in a petri dish based
Mhm.
off of, that the not the genetic makeup of some cells that from an aborted fetus, people
Yeah,
who want to grow organs in order to save people who are on, the transplant list. Obviously, we've seen that dovetail into horrific organ and
fetal
blood
organ harvesting and yeah,
harvesting. And
yeah,
so obviously there's not obviously, but in some of these examples we see instances where it's sprung from potentially an altruistic idea that has gone awry. But to your point also about the Jews in the Holocaust, and also the gypsies, and also
yeah.
individuals with disabilities,
Disabled. Yeah,
the disabled,
absolutely.
they said that those people were not human, that they were gypsies, that they were magical, that they were this, that the Jews
Yeah,
were filthy, that they carried disease. The same
yeah.
thing with disabled people. They dehumanized them to the extent that people were able to say these are actually not humans that are worthy of being, active participants in society. We actually do have to get rid of them. And I would also like to point out that this is not just from infants and from, like you were saying, zygotes and neonates. We're also talking, and we see it in our society, and I see it specifically, I'm Latin, and I see it in American culture. It is part of our culture to, at the furthest ends of the spectrum, whether it's the youngest and the most vulnerable there, also the oldest, where we
Mhm.
are
Yeah,
believe our
exactly.
elderly are disposable. I had
Yep.
a conversation with a friend, and we went for a walk, and we hadn't seen each other for a while, and her in-laws, so her father-in-law, had a medical episode, And so she was talking to me about where they're talking about his, medical care and where they're going to put them. And have I ever thought about where I'm going to put my mom or my dad when they get to a certain advanced age? And it literally was foreign language to my ears. I was like, where would I put them? Like you put old, dishware in a box and you put it in storage.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
she was like, oh, well, are you going to put them in a convalescent home? Or are you going to put them here? And I just realized she's, here, she's American, very American. And I was like, well, if something happened to my mom, then she would just move in with me. And when I stopped to think about it, that's not American society. And that's why I think we have seen such a rapid decline culturally in this country. I mean, I literally believe that this country is on fire, and it's because we don't value life. Again, whether it's the youngest from the inception all the way to the end, we put them in places where we don't have to see them, where we are not bothered by them. We put them, she was like going to put them in the best home. And I was like, why would you do that? And she's like, well, it's the best home in our area. It's the best money can buy. And I'm like, you're just buying your conscience so that you don't feel bad that they're living in a convalescent home. And you basically told them that they don't matter anymore. And it's because we have allowed, and I bring up that example because, again, like you said earlier, not to make anybody feel bad, people don't want to talk about abortion, AJ. I'm sorry.
No,
like this is
yeah.
People don't want to talk about it. Okay. So let's take something that people do talk about every day. They talk about where they're going to put their parents, how they're going to take care of their parents or their grandparents. And so I think that that's actually another example of the same idea that we're talking about here. And when you are able, again, to dehumanize humans, and put them places or dispose of them, then when you come to other scenarios, you can find out ways to dehumanize them, like you were just all those examples.
It's the slippery slope, right? So like if you say being human isn't enough, and that you say that in order to not be killed, in order to have the right to life that's inalienable, you must also be a human person, right? If you're making this category distinction between human and human and an actual person,
right?
Personhood is totally subjective. There's no scientific definition of personhood other than a social construct, right? You can't put personhood in a petri dish or look at it under a microscope, right? Are these subjective qualities that that one determines as to what quantifies the right to life and personhood. And so if you allow for certain human beings to be killed in a gestational age or a level of development in the first trimester and the beginning of their life, well, then what is going to keep you from allowing them to be killed later in life? So if consciousness or self-awareness, by the way, self-awareness doesn't happen till several months after birth, by the way, but these are the same foundational like presuppositions that are used to justify offing. I mean, you're seeing it in Canada, they call it MAID.
I was going to say
word for euthanasia. It's a leading cause of death now in Canada. I can't remember what rank it is, but a leading cause of death now in Canada is assisted suicide or euthanasia. They call it medical aid in dying because they have to dress it up with a euphemism, just like calling abortion or I mean, really, abortion is a euphemism. It's instead of dismemberment or poisoning a human being
or murder. Or murder.
Yeah, exactly. And so
the difference is with the murder, abortion and murder. And I think we need to talk about that. And you and I have talked about this, and MAID is a euphemism for the assisted euthanasia.
The murder of old people.
Well, because, and also they're allegedly, right, or arguably they are consenting to that, right? They are active participants and they are making the decision. So you don't murder yourself, right? So that's actually suicide. It's a physician assisted suicide.
Self-murder, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, self-murder. And then but with the fetuses, it is murder.